My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
It's Friday, and that means it's Brewers Outlet Day. Brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Tailgate time. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. Pickle Bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, my two personal favorites, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. And we get the show off with a bang by bringing in the best in the business, Phil Steele. Phil, welcome. It is always great to hear you on the other end with all the great info and the fact that you're just one of the great guys out there.
I appreciate that, Steve. Hey, we're talking during the regular season. How about that?
See, this is what I prefer. You know, we can do a great job because I always want to promote the publications. But you are a 24/7 guy in season and out. So getting your perspective in season, invaluable. And with that, I want to start with Texas. They went to Michigan. They won that game. They made a statement right away. What is we're seeing it with Arch Manning at quarterback with Ewers, and Ewers will eventually be back. But what's the overall depth of this team that makes them an impressive contender?
Well, I think when you look at them defensively, I was a little concerned they lost their two defensive tackles from last year, but they played well up front, really shut down Michigan's run game, held them to 80 yards rushing in the game. That was probably my biggest concern on the defense. The back seven looked solid. And offensively, you were concerned when they lost a couple of running backs prior to the year, who was going to take charge. But Jarrett Gibson was one of my top freshmen coming out of high school. He's already got 178 yards rushing. They're deep at receiver. I love Isaiah Bond, Ryan Wingo, Gunnar Helm, and the offensive line is one of the best in the country. So as long as that defensive line came along, which it has, I do think they are one of the most talented teams in the country.
Because that is still the bread and butter for Michigan, running the football. And the fact that they can keep them to a low number like that tells me something about not just what they're doing up front, but it also tells me about their speed defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't think there was anybody questioning the back seven. The main question was probably the defensive front, but they held up well against Michigan. I thought outplayed them the majority of the game.
Now, Michigan, on the other hand, Davis Warren, the former walk-on, had been the starter. It's always been my understanding, Phil, that he was a better practice player. But Alex Orji is going to get the start this week, and Orji at least will put more jump into a pretty good running game. Mullings had 155 last week. What do you think of Michigan, especially with this matchup with USC this week?
I think we're going to learn a lot about Michigan this week. And keep in mind, I'm here Jack Tuttle's healthy and ready to go. And if that's the case, I had the feeling, listening to him in August, that Tuttle was probably the guy they preferred to go with at the quarterback spot to run their full offense. But Orji gives them a different offense. His mobility, I think, is going to be tough for USC to manage. And if that offensive line can finally start playing, you heard from the Michigan folks, in the month of August, hey, we lost all 5 offensive linemen, but this line's going to be pretty good, pretty close. They haven't really been there yet this year. They did run for 300 yards last week against Arkansas State, but that's hardly USC. I think D'Anton Lynn's defenses at UCLA were amazing last year, and same thing here at USC. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch where we learn about both teams.
Yeah, no question. I think there's a lot to learn here because Dan Lynn, obviously, I know he started here at Penn State. Dad was a fine coach in the NFL, but that's been the big difference in this team. What is USC doing defensively with him that they couldn't do with Alex Grinch?
Well, they're tackling, which is something they didn't do last year. That's the one thing that jumps out at me when I'm watching tape of USC is that they're tackling a lot better. But I think the schemes are better, and they brought in a bunch of different players. I thought they brought in, 9 different transfers. The majority of them are starting on the defensive side of the ball, including a couple of guys from UCLA. So I think it's an upgrade in talent, tackling better, and just an overall better scheme on the defensive side of the ball. I was never overwhelmed with the previous defensive coordinator, even going back to his days at Ohio State.
Agreed. No, and then now Miller Moss had the big bowl game. I thought played pretty well against LSU. What do you like about him as a quarterback?
Oh, I love, first of all, that he was patient, and waited his time, stayed in the same system, especially for a guy like Lincoln Riley. You play for Lincoln Riley and you're the starting quarterback, you're going to be a Heisman contender at the end of the year. So I love the fact he stayed, didn't transfer, and it's proven true to form. This guy knows the offense as good as anybody on the team. He's been there forever, and I think he has all the physical attributes you want, and he's got Lincoln Riley as his coach. So add it all up, I think he'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the country at the end of the year.
Yeah, and they've always had the skilled people with Lincoln Riley there. Mark's the running back, not a bad player. I mean, McGree, right? I'm a big Zachariah. I mean, I know in the return game, Branch to me is a difference maker. What's your thoughts on their skilled people right now to go with Moss?
And it was. I thought at the start of spring, one of my biggest concerns was the depth they had at receiver. They had basically 3 guys you really liked, and you're like, well, what else do they have? And then, talking to Coach Riley, they bring in a Kyle Ford from UCLA. They bring in from Auburn, Jay Fair. They bring in Jaden Richardson from Division III, and I felt like the backups were better. But the Branch Hudson, Lemon, Robinson duo, they're strong at tight end as well. They've got plenty of talent there. And then as you touched on, Woody Marks has done well at running back. I think the offensive line playing them better, though, has also been a key factor. You look at the fact they've only allowed 2 sacks this year. They're averaging 5.3 yards per carry. That points a finger that we're getting better play out of the offensive line.
Yeah, no question about that. Penn State's had the 2 games so far, West Virginia on the road, then, of course, the Bowling Green game. Just some quick thoughts on what you think of the Nittany Lions to this point. It's only a 2-game sample size.
You had to be very impressed with the West Virginia game. I thought that the touchdown right before the half was massive. It was a game. It was 14-6. But every time I talked to Gil Brandt, bless his heart, and God bless him, I should say, Gil would always say, "You score right before the half, and that's a different game in the second half." And that's exactly what the Penn State game was. That the touchdown right before the half was huge. I thought Penn State dominated the second half. And naturally, in a letdown spot, they played Bowling Green. Surprised Bowling Green could put up 286 yards in the first half. Not so surprised that Penn State held them 100 yards in the second half when they came to play. So I think Penn State is one of the top teams in the country. I had them top 5 at the start of the year. I like what I see out of Drew Alar at the quarterback spot. He's hitting 65% with a 5-1 ratio. Singleton and Allen finally have regained their explosiveness of 2 years ago, which I think really helps the offense. And they're getting decent play out of the receivers. Still not an overwhelming unit, but I like what I see out of Tyler Warren so far. So I think this is a very good Penn State team. They're going to really be – I'm looking forward to that test at USC when that comes up on October the 12th. That's going to be a big game, and that'll let us know whether they're capable of beating Ohio State at home when they get them on November the 2nd.
Right. And it's interesting because this is something I did bring up with James Franklin on his show Thursday night. I asked him about Singleton and Allen, not as running backs, but how they performed in the pass game, because Allen has a touchdown catch already. Singleton has a touchdown catch already. And to me, that's a dimension that gives Drew Aller more to work with as a quarterback, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to love Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator. I mean, look what's happened to Kansas's offense since he left. They're averaging over 100 yards per game less than they averaged last year. This guy is a brilliant play caller. He'll be a head coach in no time.
Don't tell the Penn State fans that just yet. You'll send them into panic with that statement.
Sorry.
No. I want you to be honest, because it's interesting. I watched Kansas play twice. I know I'm deviating into the Kansas thing for a second, but I definitely watched the Illinois game because Penn State's playing Illinois on the horizon. I felt like the last two times I watched Kansas, they lost the game. It wasn't that the other team won; the Kansas lost, and that to me, teams win games, but they lost both those games.
Yeah, I would agree, especially the interception before the half against UNLV, because they were in complete control of the game. They're up, 17-6? They've got the ball. It's just before the half, and the one thing you couldn't do is throw an interception and have it returned, and then UNLV scores on muddled-up play where they took way too much time to run it and ended up being the last play of the half, and they score a touchdown off of it. And that's been the key. Jalen Daniels this year has already thrown 6 interceptions. Now, we know Jalen Daniels is an electrifying quarterback, an electrifying runner, dangerous playmaker, but you can't throw 6 interceptions and win football games, and that's really been the key. But I'll tell you, when I talked to Coach Bielema in the spring, after spring practice was over, and we were talking about the Kansas game, I said, Coach, man, Kansas really destroyed you last year. What are you going to do against them? He's like, Phil, do you remember the Virginia game 2 years ago or 3 years ago? And he said, we got destroyed on the road, which they did, and then they got them at home, and they beat them. Same thing happened with Kansas. So hats off to Coach Bielema for setting me straight on that.
Yeah, that was, and Brett's a good coach. We know that. Oklahoma, Tennessee. Oklahoma's first ever SEC game. Tennessee's been rolling. Everyone thinks they look like a powerhouse to this point. What's your thought on that game?
You know, I'm going against the grain here, Steve. I just read something that said 89% of the bets this week have been on Tennessee. 93% of the money is on Tennessee. Hardly anybody's betting on Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And if you watch these two teams so far this year, I mean, my average game grade, which tells you how the teams are playing this year, takes no starting grade off, has Tennessee the number 1 team in the country, 133.8. It's only got Oklahoma the number 35 team in the country. I mean, they needed 2 late scores to get past Temple, 51-3, didn't even have 400 yards offense, got outgained by Houston. We're leading Tulane by 5 points in the fourth quarter, and Tulane had the ball twice. They haven't looked good, but it's at home, it's at night, and Tennessee struggles on the road. They've actually lost 5 of their last 6 true road games. They also struggle when they can't run the ball. Last year, all 4 losses happened when they did not top 150 yards on the ground, and Oklahoma's got a really good defense and a really good rush defense. So if they can make Tennessee play one-handed, just throwing the football, this is Nico Iamaleava's first true road start, and you can't get a more hostile environment. It's probably the biggest home game Oklahoma's had in years. I'm actually going with Oklahoma in this one to go way against the grain.
If Oklahoma can do a good job on Dylan Sampson, the running back for Tennessee, I'm with you that they can do it, because Jackson Arnold, who, by the way, not only is leading them in passing, he's actually the leading rusher, too, to this point. If he plays mistake-free football, Oklahoma's got a real shot, in my opinion. How do you view that?
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely has to be mistake-free, because I think Tennessee does have the advantage at the line of scrimmage, which concerns me a little bit. You look at Oklahoma's offensive line, brand new, haven't played up to their level yet, but they're getting better. Tennessee's got one of the best offensive lines in the country. Defensive line, Tennessee's got one of the best defensive lines in the country. But their back 7 is vulnerable. They have a brand new secondary, and they haven't really been tested so far this year. I mean, Chattanooga, Kent State, and an NC State team that was down their quarterback. So I think when you look at this matchup, I think Jackson Arnold could have a big game, but he's got to play mistake-free. You hit it right on the head, Steve.
Utah-Oklahoma State's a really good game, too, by the way. That's another, to me, under-the-radar game that's terrific. I think Georgia Tech-Louisville's another really great under-the-radar game in terms of matchup. is there anybody to this point in the small sample size we have that you think is a little bit better than you thought they might be? Is there somebody that hasn't quite met standard that you thought they might be?
Well, not met standards. That one's a slam dunk. I'm going to go with Florida State and Florida. I mean,
right
those
on.
two teams have looked absolutely awful so far this year. Florida State being 0-3 right now heading into the year is pretty shocking. USC, I think, has played above what I expected coming into the year, especially with the impressive game against LSU. But they've got, as you mentioned, a brief sample size. We'll see how they do in the big house. But I do want to talk about that Georgia Tech game for a minute, because there's just an amazing stat runs through my mind, Steve, and that is Brent Key, as the head coach of Georgia Tech, has taken on 5 ranked ACC teams. Now, the fact he's 5-0 against the spread is not amazing, because that happens. Teams can go that. But he's 5-0 straight up, and almost every single game he was a 3-touchdown underdog. So here they are, a double-digit underdog against Louisville on the road, and the game they lost this year, guess who was favored? Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech was the ranked team. So whenever Brent Key has a game, go against the ranked team. I'm going with Georgia Tech in a possible upset there.
And it doesn't hurt that Haynes King is off to a good start. He's a +5 on touchdown to interceptions right now. I mean, he takes good care of the ball, and he's not bad running it either.
Yeah, and they also have Jamal Haynes in the backfield.
Yes.
So, you can't just look at Haynes King running the football or throwing. But the one big difference with Haynes King this year, as opposed to last year he had 16 interceptions. But if you watch Georgia Tech and you look at their last 6 games last year, those were the games where King really improved on the interception ratio, and that's when Georgia Tech became dangerous. And so far this year, 6 touchdowns, just 1 interception.
One last one, that is Georgia, which every year seems to have that sleepwalk game. 2 years ago at Missouri, last year Auburn, even South Carolina at a point last year. They win this game 13-12. Let's be honest here. I mean, I think anybody thinks that every SEC team is awesome and incredible. Kentucky's average, all right? They won the game. Should there be concerns?
Yeah, there definitely should be concerns with Georgia. Now, as you mentioned, they have struggled in the past on the road in that first road game, and they've got some team named Alabama coming on deck where they have to play them on the road. They also have to play Texas on the road and Ole Miss on the road.
Yeah.
I think they clearly will drop at least one of those games this year. But, the thing that jumped out to me with the Georgia-Kentucky game was South Carolina's got a really good defensive line, because Kentucky couldn't do a damn thing on offense against South Carolina. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't protect the quarterback. Every time he stepped back, he had players in his face. And Georgia, now they were down a couple of defensive linemen for the game, but Georgia's got the best depth in the country. They go 3 deep at every single position. So I expected their defensive line to just overwhelm Kentucky, and they did not. Kentucky actually ran the ball for 170 yards. They only allowed 3 sacks. That would be a concern of mine, the fact that Georgia's defensive front did not dominate that Kentucky offensive line, which got blown away by South Carolina.
Tom Allen, Penn State's defensive coordinator, says, Steve, I love coaching ball. Well, guess what? I love talking ball with Phil Steele. Phil, thank you so much. I appreciate the valuable time. Hope everything's going well for you all the way through, and we appreciate the fact you gave us time today.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure talking to you, my friend, and good that we could finally do it during the football season.
We will do it again. How about that?
That sounds good, Steve. I look forward to that, and appreciate your insights on Penn State football that I always get from you.
Hey, Phil, my pleasure. You're the best.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Phil Steele, best in the business. Incredible. All right. We'll take a break. Brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Looking to invest? Start your journey by exploring exchange-traded funds with Global X ETFs. Exchange-traded funds, or ETFs for short, create baskets of stocks, bonds, and other assets that you can buy in a single trade. Global X specializes in ETFs that track emerging trends, like the rise of artificial intelligence, as well as strategies aimed to generate income potential. Visit globalxetfs.com to discover how you can get started.
If you want to have a fun day, you have to drive a Hyundai. From Sunbury Motors Hyundai, you'll be busting through
through the snow this winter with these incredible all-wheel drive savings. Lease a third-row seat all-wheel drive Santa Fe for only $450 a month for 36 months. Choose a 2024 all-wheel drive Sonata for only $29,674. Or a 2025 all-wheel drive Kona for just $28,968. Looking for a compact truck? Sunbury Motors Hyundai has 17 Santa Cruzes in stock with savings up to $1,774. Remember, all new Hyundais come with America's best warranty, 10 years with 100,000 miles. We're not done. Lease an 80 MPG Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid for only $465 a month for 36 months. Sunbury Motors has 53 Tucsons available. Hard to believe it, but winter is just around the corner. And now is the time to save big money on your next new all-wheel drive Hyundai from Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. 36-month leases are 10,000 miles a year with $4,000 down. See dealer for details.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, light, business, motorcycle, boat, RV. Multiple insurance needs, and they can handle them all. And save you money in the process. Customer service means everything to them. At Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. All right. By the way, Illinois-Nebraska tonight. Interesting game. Very interesting game. And some interesting games high school-wise tonight. Will you be at Lewisburg Warrior Run?
I will be at Lewisburg Warrior Run. I'm looking forward to it.
What are your thoughts on that game?
I have none. No, I'm just kidding. I waited a while actually to do my picks for the paper yesterday because I really didn't know who I was going to pick on this one because I think they're pretty evenly matched. It's two teams that are not used to being in this position. I think I mentioned this before. Warrior Run's never been 4-0 before, and this is the first time since 2010 since Lewisburg's been 4-0. So it's going to be interesting to see how the kids handle that. It's homecoming. The game is on TV, so there's a lot of – I talked to both coaches this week, and there's a lot of excitement in the schools and a lot of distractions. So I'm interested to see how the kids handle that and just how both defenses play. Both offenses have been pretty good all season, and it's probably going to come down who kind of is able to figure out a way to stop the other's offense.
But Matt Catrillo's showing up, so the game's on TV?
Yeah, the SEC V8 people are showing up. Sounds like it's Jason Guarente and Charlie Fisher this week. John Paul is 1 today.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So
we're taking the day off?
Hey, you got a better chance of me taking my daughter's day off for her birthday than you do of taking the day off for my birthday.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
Notice on the schedule for basketball that I've got to travel on my birthday, so I always laugh about that stuff.
Did it finally come out?
Yeah, it came out yesterday.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah. So, yeah, because it finally came out. But, yeah, it's a couple interesting things. They open with Purdue on a Thursday? I think so. And it's here.
Plus, Zagidi won't be there either.
Yeah, backcourt's good. I mean, those two kids are good players. But we'll have to see how they do without the big guy. They've got no Saturday games in January. None. Even away. No Saturday games. Really? They have a couple. They have more in February and into the beginning of March. And they do have Washington on a Saturday here and Maryland on a Saturday. And I know they're at Minnesota on a Saturday. But I have to give you the Dick Girardi text chain yesterday. You'll love this. This is how we think. Okay? So he sends me a text, and I was at practice when he sent me the text. Then we kept texting back and forth after I got to the field last night. First text. September 8th at UCLA. Saturday, February 8th at UCLA. Sunday, February 9th at Santa Anita. And then Tuesday, February 11th at USC. Then he says, open with Purdue at home. Super Bowl Sunday at Santa Anita. At Rutgers' second game. So they sent me a screenshot of the schedule because he knew I was not around a computer at the time. Then he says, Santa Anita started at 11 a.m. Super Bowl Sunday last year, done by 3. He says, if we get there that Thursday, we can always go Friday. But we are going, and Mike needs to come with us, Mike Rhodes. Believe me. I'll show Mike the text on Monday. He said, Penn State's schedule was announced last, very much of an afterthought. Did not even mention any players, said it was going to be a gauntlet early. But the Santa Anita thing is something we had talked about. And somebody's like, oh, well, that's your priority? Okay. We're going to get there on a Friday, in all likelihood, February 7th. So we have to stay overnight Friday. They play the game Saturday. We stay overnight Saturday. We're there Sunday. They'll practice. We're there Monday. They'll practice. We're there Tuesday. They'll play a game, and then we'll fly back and get back in the early morning hours Wednesday. With all due respect to anybody that says, well, obviously we know what your priorities are. What do you want us to do on Super Bowl Sunday? Right? Sit in the hotel, do nothing, pace, what? Going to practice will take 2 hours. Right? In fact, they may do very little on that Sunday. Probably watch film. They'll practice definitely on Monday. Right? So Sunday, I have to get ready for the USC game. At that point of the season, because it's basketball and you're talking about 13 players on each team, it takes me about an hour. Do you want me to watch the pregame show where I'll learn zero? Nothing? Or can we go out and have some fun? We're going to go out and have some fun. And remember, when he's talking about 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., You're talking about Pacific time. So, in other words, you're talking about Eastern time, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. So we'd get back, Santa Anita from the hotel. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what hotel we're staying in. I know what hotel we're staying in for football. My strong preference would be to stay in the same hotel for basketball. I love this hotel, by the way. I always have. It's a great hotel. And it's not far from the USC campus. But if we're staying in the same hotel, we're 30 miles. We're 30 miles from Santa Anita. We'll get back in time for either the start of the game or like 9-10 minutes ago in the first quarter.
Do you need a producer for Southern California in February? In Southern California, not from here.
Somebody volunteering to go on the plane with us?
Hey. Always.
Don't blame you. That's what I've told everybody that's asked me about this. I said there's a personal way of looking at it, and there's a realistic way of looking at it. So here's the realistic way of looking at it. For Mick Cronin, for Eric Musselman, for Mike Rhodes, Matt Painter, James Franklin, Lincoln Riley, Deshaun Foster, Dan Lanning, Ryan Day, Sharon Moore, whatever. All their jobs, okay, got more difficult because of the expansion. All of them. More difficult for the 4 teams out there, more difficult for the teams within that already were existing in the conference. Conference is deeper now. It's just deeper. You look at Penn State's football schedule, 1/3 of it in the conference, 1/3 of the conference games are against new Big Ten opponents, including USC. Right? Basketball, same thing. Now you got to go to Los Angeles, play UCLA and USC. Got more difficult. But Penn State's also better than some of the teams in the Pac-12 that USC and UCLA are playing. Penn State's better than some of the people the pundits think they are. I wasn't sure about last year's team. When did you start, Todd? Right about what?
I started training like end of October, I believe.
Right.
Beginning of November.
I think you would recall, like at the beginning of the basketball season, I think pretty much I said, we'll see. I just wasn't sure. I watched summer practice, some preseason practice. I wasn't sure. I feel a lot more sure about this team. I like this team. And that's the realistic part. Everybody's job, because of the depth of the conference, got tougher. Now from the broadcaster's point of view, it's incredibly exciting. Didn't change jobs. Still work for the same awesome place I've always worked. Love the job more than ever. Oh, and by the way, they've added these 4 teams in football and basketball. And from a job point of view, the job got more exciting, and I never changed jobs. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. Now, that's from the broadcast. Again, from the coach's point of view, from the player's point of view, okay, it's deeper, tougher, without question, so your job got tougher. From the broadcaster's point of view, right, boy, it sure is fun for me to see some of these matchups coming up. I mean, that part, I think that's really neat. I mean, Oregon's never played in the Jordan Center. Washington's never played in the Jordan Center, for goodness sakes. Penn State's never played Washington in basketball, period. The only time Penn State ever played UCLA in basketball was that game I did in the Carrier Dome 33 years ago, almost 34 years ago. In the NCAA terms, the only time they ever played. I'm the only witness left.
I remember watching it. I couldn't tell you much about the game, though.
Oh, I can tell you almost every detail of that game, even in warm-ups. Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. So, yeah. I mean, so from a personal point of view, the job, which was already an exciting job yesterday, for years, got more exciting this year. But I also appreciate the fact that as exciting as the job got for me, on a personal basis, it became more difficult for the people who have to work in it. So, interesting way of looking at it. All right. We'll take a break. This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to PurdyInsurance.com here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
If you want to have a fun day, you have to drive a Hyundai. From Sunbury Motors Hyundai, you'll be busting through the snow this winter with these incredible all-wheel drive savings. Lease a third-row seat all-wheel drive Santa Fe for only $450 a month for 36 months. Choose a 2024 all-wheel drive Sonata for only $29,674. Or a 2025 all-wheel drive Kona for just $28,968. Looking for a compact truck? Sunbury Motors Hyundai has 17 Santa Cruzes in stock with savings up to $1,774. Remember, all new Hyundais come with America's best warranty, 10 years, 100,000 miles. We're not done. Lease an 80 MPG Hyundai Tucson plug-in hybrid for only $465 a month for 36 months. Sunbury Motors has 53 Tucsons available. Hard to believe it, but winter is just around the corner, and now is the time to save big money on your next new all-wheel drive Hyundai from Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. 36-month leases are 10,000 miles a year with $4,000 down. See dealer for details.
Yeah, tomorrow's game gets going at 3:30. Jack and I, along with Brian and Roger and Bob Taylor, we get going tomorrow at 2. You'll hear it on Eagle 107. So, that'll be tomorrow. Kent State. We all know what Kent State went through last week. I watched the first quarter of it. I didn't need to watch any more of the game or the tape or anything like that after one quarter.
Did you see they refused a running clock?
I
think Onward State had it today. That
yeah, I don't think that's an option though.
Oh, they asked him if he wanted a running clock, and he asked his captains, and his captain said that they don't care if they score 100. It's the running clock's insulting.
It is.
But you have the rest of the season to play, my friend.
Yeah, I don't. I don't think that's an option, to be honest with you. But whatever. I don't. Seriously, I did ask James last night about with Adrian Wojnarowski going to St. Bonaventure to be the GM. GMs are now commonplace, and we know Andy Frank has filled that job here. What I thought was interesting in the answer was that he then expanded upon it, saying they're going to need somebody that knows how to handle money because of the new system then in all likelihood is in place starting next season. The ability for the university to give money to players. And I think that was, I thought that was the biggest nugget of information out of the show last night. Was that. It's going to have to be somebody, look, they're going to have to handle the money when it comes to wrestling. They're going to have to handle the money when it comes to basketball. I mean, let's face it. But I thought that was the biggest nugget out of last night's show was that.
I wonder if they split it up like the NFL used to and have somebody, somebody strictly personnel and somebody strictly, for lack of a better term, salary cap-wise.
Well, no, that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
In other words, Andy would still be in charge of everything that comes to personnel when it comes to organizing the recruiting, doing a great job of organizing the transfer portal situations and so forth. Andy does all that dealing with the personnel, right? James wants now somebody else to come in and have them be the ones to handle the money part of it. I already have, to be frank with you, I do have a general idea of how Penn State wants to divide up the money. I'm not at liberty to say it, but I've already got an excellent idea of how they want to do it. Wojnarowski, meanwhile, walked away from nearly $20 million owed to him by ESPN. And Adam Schefter said, look, he wanted his life back. He didn't want to have to work on holidays, didn't want to be away from more family gatherings. He didn't want to have to take a shower with the phone up against the shower door so he can see a text that's coming in, or take your phone with you to the urinal and hold it in one hand while taking care of business with the other. That's the life we live, and that was the life we chose not to do any longer because it takes over your life.
I saw a story earlier this fall about Diana Rossini of the athletic breastfeeding and trying to answer a text from a GM.
It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Right? So